All right. Now I'm recording. I should be. So, first of all, that's not what I wanted. Those of you that are on my team know, because I emailed it to you and I posted it in the workplace group. It's a pinned post, step-by-step guide what to do after joining eXp Realty. You'll notice that one of the sections in the guide right at the top is called writing an offer. If you were to open that up, which would require me moving this around, you're going to see that it starts off with the question, do you have a buyer representation agreement? Now, before you write the offer, that specifies commission. If you don't, do that first, because the new rule says that you're supposed to have a buyer rep agreement before you show property. Is it possible, though, that you didn't show them the property, but they saw it at an open house? The answer is yes. Can you still get paid for representing them? The answer is yes. Because now you're taking on broker responsibility to help them write an offer and all that sort of stuff. You need it before you write the offer, right? You need it before. It has to be dated before. Don't write the offer, get it accepted, figure out what the seller is going to pay you, and then do the buyer representation agreement, unless you're good at backdating stuff. That was a joke. Don't show that to brokers and say, look what he said. Right? I'm just saying, you get the idea. The buyer rep agreement comes first. There's information about that here, right? This is like the Russian nesting dolls. We have a transaction coordinator that's very good at filling out forms. Very good. And you might want help in, doing that. There's a form you would fill out. The helper fill out the forms for you. For those of you that are do-it-yourselfers, and it's good for you to learn how to do this. In fact, I think I did a class recently, but it really hasn't changed very much. You could set up zip forms, templates, all that kind of stuff, and do it yourself. You also might want to look at my document that's called What to Do When You're Making an Offer. And I go through a bunch of different steps. There's a video of me someplace doing this, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Notice one of them is talk to the listing agent and find out, do you have any offers? Now, preemptive, you heard me talk about if it says in the MLS they're only going to take offers on next Thursday, it doesn't mean that as a buyer's agent, you can't ask the question, are you open to a preemptive offer? Now, I mentioned in the listing class that if you put in the MLS that you're not taking offers till next Thursday, but you take offers before and sell it and change the status, you can be disciplined by the Association of Realtors for unfair treatment to your fellow real estate agents. But if you're the buyer's agent, that's not your problem, right? You want to know, are they going to take preemptive offers? Are they interested in something that comes in early? Do they want it? Do they have an idea of how many offers are expected? Now, I realize some listing agents are not particularly cooperative. I get it. They don't even return your calls. They don't return your text messages. You still got to make the effort. If they say, well, I don't know how many offers that there are going to, well, how many people like me have been calling you and asking you how many offers you're going to have? Well, you're the only one. Then thank you. Thank you, right? Do they have any disclosures? Do they know if they're using Glide or Disclosures.io? They probably know, unless they're cheap, they probably know how many disclosure packages have been taken by other real estate agents. That gives you a hint. If they say, well, there's only been 3 disclosure packages, if they say, well, we had 30 that have been downloaded, you see, what we're trying to do is to determine whether or not we're competing with a bunch of other offers. You get it. Is there a price expected by the seller? Now, you might think, well, that's a crazy question. They listed it for $700,000. Obviously, they want $700,000. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes they list it low with the intention of getting more. I have seen cases in Silicon Valley where we're nuts, right? But I've seen cases where the buyer made an offer $100,000 over list price. And the seller said, how disappointing. I don't want to take it, right? Because they were thinking more. Any terms that the seller wants, rent back, quick, slow. Tell me what would make the seller happy. If there's any pending transactions that would appear as a comparable to yours, you might want to talk to the pending listing agents. Now, they may or may not tell you what the pending price is, but you understand those pending transactions are going to create comparables that an appraiser may use on your property. Did you get a lot of offers? Did you get over, below? Give me a hint. What, any weird terms or conditions, right? And getting that information, knowing whether or not there's going to be multiple offers, this puts us in a better condition to write a purchase agreement. If there's disclosures, you download them. I'm not going to do everything, but there's even a little outline, right? So now I believe that I still have, let me see. I probably have copied this once or twice, but I'm copying it again. For those of you that have never seen a sample of the residential purchase agreement, there's a sample I'm putting in here. All right. So you can follow along. Otherwise, whatever. By the way, if you're on my team and you're going through this, make an appointment with me and I'll help you. I'll help you with it. So I'm assuming, first of all, this is uploading yesterday's video. Let's pick a property. Now, YouTube gets mad at me sometimes for using accurate information when I'm writing an offer. So we're just picking an active listing. They may get mad at my video, but we'll see. But you want an MLS number, right? I picked an EXP listing just because I don't know why not. And you want an MLS number. Now, the reason we want an MLS number is going to become clear in a moment, but it sometimes doesn't work. I'll show you what I mean. So you've logged into zip forms. You've logged into car.org. You've clicked on transactions. You've clicked on transactions. You're waiting. The yellow button comes up and bang, there's going to be our dashboard. All right. So if we're starting, first of all, before you've done this, you ought to have created a template. And the template should be a buyer template, which means, like, here's an example. I know I have one. I'm not even here, EXP buyer, right? So this is an example, and you don't necessarily have to put in all these forms, right? I think I may have pointed that out yesterday. You don't have to. I was feeling, I don't know, like adding all the forms when I originally made the template. The important part of the template is this. You want your information and your EXP or broker's information, if you're not an EXP, into the template as the party for the selling agent. Because you don't want to be putting this in every single time you write an offer. Hopefully you're going to do it more than once. Now, notice I left out a bunch of things. Agent ID, that doesn't populate anywhere. Plus, you don't know what it is. Do you know what your MLS ID is? It's not your DRE number. It's a weird number. Who cares? Nobody's going to, it doesn't populate your phone number, cell phone, yes, not business phone. This is all that I put in the template. Right now, if you haven't done this, you should do this because it's going to make your life a lot easier when it comes to writing an offer. So let's go back to our dashboard, right? Because I've assumed, and in my how to write an offer, there's a video and a handout on how to make templates. The transaction coordinator will help you make a template. You want a template, right? Buyer side, seller side. We go to new transaction. We're going to be writing a new purchaser offer. Now, remember the MLS number. MLS Connect, which is in all the MLSs in California. If you click on MLS Connect and you put in the MLS number, I click on property photo, but it doesn't show up anywhere, right? I don't know. I just do it. I click on find. It finds the property. Hopefully, there's the photo, and I would click on use the listing. Now, I'm not going to use the listing because I don't want YouTube later saying, you know, you made a video about somebody's house and it's not a real one. So 123 Main Street is if it's a buyer rep agreement, we have the name of the buyer as the name of the transaction. If it is a RPA, a purchase agreement, we have the address of the property that we're writing the offer on as the name of the transaction. I know other people have different theories about this. I'm just telling you mine, right? So because the buyer, I hate to tell you this, oops, the buyer may have to make more than one offer before they own anything. Right? I'm just saying. So we're going to put it in. All right. Now this isn't a real address. Hear me, Google. Not a real address. If it were a real address, well, MLS Connect works pretty good if the listing you're writing the offer on is in your MLS. Now, where this comes up mostly is Southern California, particularly the LA Orange County area or the Bay Area. What is it about those two areas that would cause an issue with MLS Connect? And the answer is multiple MLSs. So if you're in the Los Angeles area or Orange County area, there's a bunch of listings in CRMLS and a bunch of listings in the MLS or CLAW. In Silicon Valley, I could find listings in San Jose from Bay East, which has a BE number, MLS listings, which has an ML number, San Francisco, which has an SF number, Barris, which is the North County, which has a BA number, and Metrolist, the Sacramento Valley, that has an ME number. Now, the automatic import from the MLS only really works with my MLS. Or an MLS where it's not just an alliance MLS, it has to be a synchronized MLS. So if you put the MLS number in MLS Connect and it's saying we can't find the property, right? Well, then that limits some of the import that we're going to be able to do. However, Record Connect is probably going to find the property because it's looking at tax data as well as other information. And we would click on it and import the information. You see, the two most time-consuming parts of writing an offer is number one, putting in your information and your broker's information as a party, your buyer's information as a party, right? Getting the parties and importing all the information from the seller, the listing agent, and getting all that into the form. Once you've got all of that information into the form, writing the offer doesn't take very long, right? Because hopefully you already know how much you're going to offer and whatever. We pick residential, we pick a template, and I don't know. How about I don't even know which one this is, but I'm not going to use it. I'll use one that I know is an EXP template. Well, I have some old templates too. So, how about EXP commercial buyer? That's probably not it. Why am I having difficulty? Buyer rep, BRBC. That one. Okay, EXP buyer. I've overdone it. You may be shocked to know I've overdone it. All right, so we've clicked on. We've applied the template. So now we're looking at the summary. We go to add docs. Now, because I was, fixated on adding docs, I've added more docs than you're going to want to add but the purchase agreement is probably not there because it's been updated. And we go up here. Oh, no, here it is. The residential purchase agreement, right? We want to make sure that's there. And by the way, you got to have a buyer representation before you do this. So I'm not going to go through all the documents that I put in because I had, nothing else to do. I'm going to go just to the one that we're going to cover today, which is the residential purchase agreement. Julio. All right. Now, assuming, and because I was just messing around, I didn't put in buyer's information, which you would have done, right? So this is Billy, the buyer, and we're going to click on the buyer. Now, once I put it in here, it puts it in the party information. But notice what the template has done. It's put in my company's name, my DRE number, my company's DRE number, all that sort of stuff. We scroll down. Date prepared is not necessarily the date that the buyer is going to sign it. It's not the date that the seller is going to sign it. I always get asked questions, doesn't that date have to be the date that everybody signs the contract? No, it means this is the date that you prepared. Is this important? The answer is yeah, it's really important because all of the other forms, you're going to see all of the other forms are going to say, which residential purchase agreement are you referring to? And they want to know the one that was dated a particular date. So we click on this. Usually we would pick that day. And we're in Santa Clara County. And notice it says assessor's parcel number or numbers, plural. Why would you do that? Well, I've sold a property in Cupertino that was originally the buyer bought it and bought two lots right next to each other a long time ago. And then he built one great big humongous house right in the middle. Now it had one postal address, but it had two legal lots, two APN numbers. So you could write in multiple APN numbers. Where would you get the APN number if you use that Real Connect thing that I didn't use because this isn't a real address? It's the tax records, and it would have known the APN number and it would have put it in. If you're saying, well, none of that is working for me, how would I ever find this information? In your MLS, when you're looking at a listing, click on where it says tax. Oops, why won't it let me do that? Oh, because I've already clicked on it? I don't know. It's not letting me do it. I don't know why. I picked one that's crazy. Okay, so why won't it let me do it? I don't know. However, if I looked it up in RPR, it's going to tell me the APN number. And that other program does import the APN number. Right, you should have the APN number because it's an identifier for the property, and sometimes street addresses are not legal or they're not determinative. I had somebody once tell me, obviously the property, has two legal units, obviously. Well, why would you? Well, look at the post office is giving us two different addresses. I laughed. The post office doesn't care. If you put up two numbers and mail starts arriving, they'll deliver it. But anyhow, if we had done the import from MLS Connect, it would have filled out the information for the listing broker's firm, the seller's firm. It would have had the seller's agent number. You need to make sure that the DRE numbers came over. A lot of times they don't both come over. How would you find them? You scroll down to the bottom. Here's the listing agent's DRE number. Here's eXp Realty of California Incorporated DRE number. The information is all there, right? But you need to fill that out. Confirmation of agency, which is the part we're filling out, is required by the California Civil Code. Failure to remember from your real estate principles funds. There are 3 steps in agency disclosure. Number 1, you disclose. What does that mean? You go through the agency disclosure form and you say there are three kinds of real estate agents. There's the agent who represents the seller. That's so-and-so. That's Sherry. That's not me. Her job is to get the seller the highest price on the best terms possible. Then there's the agent who represents the buyer. That's me. That's us. We're helping you. We're on your side. They're not on your side. We're on your side. And then there are dual agents, and that's people that are representing both the buyer and the seller. Do you understand that? They say, yeah, you've done step one. You've disclosed agency relationship. Step two in the code says elect. Now, that doesn't mean you nominate people and vote. It means at the time that you are going through agency disclosure, you might not know if the listing office is the same broker as yours. You may not know that because you just talked about that when you were doing the buyer representation, right? You don't know. But if it turns out that the listing broker and your broker are the same broker, you've elected, that's just the word they use, to be a dual agent. And then the third is called confirmation, and the civil code says that it has to be in the purchase agreement. Confirm as to who represents who. If you don't put this in, your broker is going to get mad. Everybody's going to be upset. The transaction coordinator will be sending you, snippy emails saying, you got to fill this out. There's another form you're going to have to do. Fill it out, get it right, put in the DRE numbers. Any questions? I don't know. All right. The buyer's agent, broker, both. So we're going to be the buyer's agent. Somebody else is going to be the listing agent. There's a form called PRBS, it's a BS form, which we'll get to in a little bit. So we need to know what the purchase price is. So I've already done in my how to write an offer, how to do a competitive market analysis, whatever. My advice is what you would, if you're writing an offer for a buyer and the buyer wants some, give me a strategy. If you offer list price or better, there's a good chance the seller is going to accept it. There may be multiples, maybe they got other expectations. If you have an appraisal contingency, then you can tell the buyer you're not going to overpay for the property, right? Because the lender who's putting in more money than you is going to send out an expert who's conservative to look at the property and determine whether or not the amount you're offering is high, low, or fair. And if the appraiser says it's not worth that much, you don't have to buy the property and you can renegotiate the price. Right? If the appraiser says, yeah, that is a good price, I like it, then you can sleep well at night knowing that the independent expert has confirmed that you made a good offer and the lender is going to lend on that amount. But still, they might say, well, my uncle told me that I should always offer 20% less because you never know. You never know. Well, that might work. If people say that to me, I say that's going to work if we only look at properties that have been on the market more than 90 days. Right? But if we're talking about, remember all those questions, are there going to be multiple offers? Is this a short days on market property? Are we competing against other buyers? If the answer is yes, and you lowball, you're just not going to get the house. You're going to have the practice of going through writing an offer. But I've actually told buyers, yeah, we can do that, but you need to understand if we do that, you are not buying this house. Just as long as you understand that. We'll do whatever you want, but you just need to know you're not buying this house. Someone else is going to buy this house. If we offer high with an appraisal contingency as our safety net, we can renegotiate the price later if it doesn't appraise. Everybody with me, but you might want, requires a little strategery. Elena has a question.
Thank you, Michael. I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit. Are you saying that, actually, you didn't cut out, I got distracted. You're saying that,
Honesty, my gosh.
well, not to ever offer lower than list price?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying run a CMA.
Oh,
But if this is a property that has recently been on the market, You went to the open house, it was like an anthill, people crawling all over. The listing agent doesn't call you back for hours because they have so many phone calls. And he says, yeah, I'm getting lots of calls. Everybody's talking about writing offers. This is not the time to lowball,
Got it.
right? If it's been on the market 90 days, right, and the listing agent calls you back desperate, thank you for calling. What questions you have? Please write an offer, right? Well, now you can, you can get a little more, creative. But that's why it's important to find out, are you competing? And a lot of buyers want to do all the negotiation before they get into contract, but they're going to have a lot more leverage when they are in contract because the seller isn't going to want to start all over. And if it doesn't appraise, the chances are much better that the seller will change their price than they are at the beginning, particularly if there's multiple offers. Was that better?
Yep, thank you for.
All right. So let's just say 900,000. Why not? Now, close of escrow. You should talk to your loan agent. Now, different lenders can close quicker, slower, whatever. I know, for example, that Rocket Mortgage, if they've gone through all their underwriting, can do it. It's like an all cash deal. They're going to do it in 12 to 14 days. They can, right? If they've underwritten it. Right now, if your buyer only has talked to a loan agent and hasn't really sent them anything and doesn't really know, the question for the loan agent is, assuming everything goes right, how soon can you close? Right? And don't necessarily trust them unless you know the loan agent. But sometimes they say, I can do it in 21 days. I would always add 4 or 5 days to that at least. Because I'm just telling you, they don't always close on time. Expiration of offer. One of the things you should ask the listing agent is, if I got you an offer today on your listing by 3 o'clock, how soon could you present it to the seller and get back to us? If they say, well, the seller's out of town, they just got on an airplane, they're flying, to another country, we're not going to be able to communicate for X amount of time, then that would. But if you just leave it as a 3 calendar days, what might happen is the seller says, oh, well, we got an offer. How soon do we have to accept it? Oh, you have 3 days. Oh, well, why don't we wait and see if we get some more offers, right? You don't want to give them too long of a leash. If you give them too short of a leash, then it may not be possible for them to review and get back to you within the time period that you've given them, which messes everything up because now you have to have an extension of time addendum that goes with the. So you should talk to the listing agent. How soon do you think we could get an offer? And shorten that leash a little bit, because otherwise they'll be shopping your offer to other buyers. I do that as a listing agent. Just so you realize, if you send me an offer and it's 900,000 and you give me 3 days, and then Elena calls me up and says, hey, Mike, I have a client that's interested in your listing. Do you have any offers? I'm going to say yes. Oh, really? Can you give me some idea of whether or not it's above list price or under 900,000? Oh, okay. And then, because why not? Right? Because now she knows to beat 900,000. And then if she makes an offer for 920 and leaves me 3 days, and then Khalid calls me up and says, hey, this is going to, I know you have a listing, I'm ready to time on. Do you have any offers? Yes, 2. Oh, really? Well, what's your highest? 920. Oh, right. Now, at the end, I'm going to be circling back to all of them, and I'm going to say, hey, Elaine, I really appreciate the offer that you made. It was really good. The opportunity to work with you, but I just want you to know, you're in second place. All right. Your offer for 920, you're in second place. Do you want to know what it would take to be in first place? And she's probably going to say, yeah, I want to know. My buyers would like to know, right? You understand? And I've worked up the price $100,000 by doing this. Good listing agents always are doing this. if you give them time to do it. Right. But if somebody says, I can get you the answer today, why give them 3 days to shop your offer around and all that? Now, how many of you think that what I just described is illegal, unethical, or immoral? The residential listing agreement says that the seller gives their agent authority to disclose to other people, other agents, it just says to others, the number of and amounts of any offers that has been received. That's in the residential listing agreement. It's in the PRBS form. If you scroll down, there's a thing about confidentiality, and it says offers are not confidential and they're going to be disclosed to other people. It says in the statewide buyer and seller advisory, which no one reads. I understand that, but there's a paragraph that says you should know as a buyer that your offer is not confidential and that others may be told what it is. It is not illegal. It is not unethical. It is not immoral. And if I'm the listing agent, I'm going to use that as an opening to work up the price. Just saying. Initial deposit. If there's multiple offers, it better be 3%. I'm just saying. Right. If there's multiple offers, what is 3%? I don't know. What's 3 times 9? This is what, let me just put in the numbers for fun. All right. 2.78. Why not? Why 3%? Why? Because the California Civil Code says that if a buyer is buying a 1 to 4 unit residential property and it's going to be owner occupied, the most the seller can keep if the buyer breaks the contract without cause is 3% of the purchase price and has to return the rest of it to the buyer. So if it's multiple offers, then you might want to come in at 3%. When would we do less? When would we do less? Well, let's say the property is located not in Silicon Valley, or it's possible, I guess, but let's say the property has been on the market for 90 days or 40 days, and the seller does not have a termite inspection, does not have a property inspection, doesn't have a roof inspection, hasn't gotten anything. Now, and it's not a fresh listing, and there doesn't look like there's going to be multiple offers. Well, we could say, well, we really don't want to give you 3% right now because there's too many ifs. I'll give you 1% now, and we're going to increase the deposit by $18,000, making it 3% upon removal of the contingencies. Everybody see that over there? All right, and when would we do that? We wouldn't do that if we were competing against other offers, because the rest of them are probably going to say 3%, right? But the rest of them are going to probably say 3%. I'm having trouble coming up with that. Notice it says within 3 business days, or sometimes listing agents are going to say this, that they want you to change that to 24. How about this? Next business day. Why? Why does that matter? Have you ever had a buyer that says, look, I got 3 properties, I've been making offers and they're never being accepted. And so what I'd like to do this time is I'm going to make offers on 3 different properties. Right? Why not? The sellers get multiple offers. Why can't I have multiple offers? And then we're going to make all 3 offers. And then depending on which ones are accepted, we'll pick the one we like best and then cancel the other 2. Now, how can they get away with that? Well, the answer is that if you give them 3 business days, which exclude Saturday, Sunday, and legal holidays, to put the money into escrow, it gives the buyer the ability to stall. What does it say in the purchase agreement about that 3% earnest money deposit and the seller gets liquidated damages? What it says is that if the buyer breaches the contract The damages are, and I quote, the deposit actually paid, but no more than 3% if it's an owner-occupied 1 to 4 unit property. So what if the buyer hasn't put any money into escrow, hasn't actually paid anything? What options does the seller have now? By the way, as a listing agent, not only would I say, I want you to put the deposit in by the next business day, I don't change the status from active to pending until the money goes into escrow. Because I've been doing this a while, and you would change it from active to pending, and then the money doesn't go into escrow, and then you get a call from the buyer's agent saying they've decided not to buy the property, and then you have to go change the status back to active, and then all the agents are saying, what happened? How come it fell through? What's wrong with the property? You understand? So as a listing agent, when I actually have had buyer's agents call me and say, when are you going to change it to pending? And my answer is, when are you going to put the money into escrow? You know, and yes, I've been fined by the MLS for just not doing it. But you understand, if we're competing and we know there's multiple offers, and we put that in our offer because our client isn't, trying to make multiple offers on different properties, it's going to make our offer look more serious, more earnest, right? A 3% deposit, next business day, we're serious. We're not just messing around. We put in a loan amount. Now, if you don't have a loan contingency, none of this really matters, right? I mean, you have to put in a loan amount, but whether or not it's a fixed rate, not to exceed, whatever. So if you have a financing contingency and you say 6.5, right? Well, what that's saying is that if you can't get an $800,000 loan at no more than 6.5% interest, you don't have to buy the property. Now, you'll see agents countering this and saying prevailing rate. Now, this is what I think. If you have a real loan pre-approval and there aren't a bunch of ifs about the loan, it is better to make an offer without a loan contingency. What does pre-approval mean? What does that mean? Right now, if you don't have a loan contingency, then this isn't important because loan isn't a contingency. If you do have a loan contingency and you don't put in anything here, then basically you're saying that I'll take any loan at any interest rate, which may cause an issue. Right now, if you remember, loan and appraisal and inspection are 3 different contingencies. So if you don't have a loan contingency, it doesn't mean that you don't care about appraisal. It still has to appraise if you have an appraisal contingency. You still get a right to inspect the property and determine if there's anything you don't like if you have an inspection contingency. But as a listing agent, what I would do is I would look and see if you've got a loan contingency, did you write in a percentage that is impossible to get? Not to exceed 5.5%. Well, you see, I know what you're doing. You're giving yourself an out because you're not going to be able to get a loan for 5.5% interest. I know it, right? So you've given yourself an escape hatch. So, my theory, multiple offers, competitive property, you want to write an offer that the seller can accept. You shouldn't be writing an offer that the seller or the listing agent, if they're not dumb, are going to counter, right? You understand? You shouldn't assume, well, maybe I'll just sneak it by, right? I'll put in 5.5%. They may not notice, and now I've got a win for my client. There's a chance the listing agent's going to figure out what you're doing, and they're going to say, these people are jerks, and we're going to have to counter them. Let's go with another offer. Just my theory. Right? I like to write offers that the seller can accept rather than write offers that I know if the seller is paying attention, they have to counter. It's conventional. If it's FHA or VA and you click on those boxes, it launches another form. Not going to go through that now. Seller financing, if you're on my team and you're doing seller financing, talk to me. Talk to me, right? Because it's more fun. Anyhow, that's all of this. If there's a second loan, we put it in here, not as common. Here's the good stuff. Paragraph G1. Seller credit to the buyer. Now, the first seller credit to the buyer refers to closing costs, repairs, interest rate buy down, etc. Now, that can be negotiated later. If the seller doesn't have a termite, a property, a roof, a chimney, a pool, a prelim, etc., I actually, by the way, represent helping my buyer agents like that. Like in Silicon Valley, there's a good chance they're going to have all of those documents. They're not doing it for the buyer's benefit. They're doing it to lock the buyer in. But if they don't have all those inspections and reports, it means we're going to have another shot at renegotiating the terms of this deal. Because once we get them, we can now argue about credits and things like that. If you know that in order for your buyer to buy the property, they need an interest rate buy down and they need a couple of points to do it, here. Additional finance terms, if you're on my team and you're thinking of writing something in here, talk to me first, right? I see poetry, rhyming. Just talk to me first, because there's a good chance you shouldn't be writing it in. Just saying. Seller, here we go. Seller agrees to pay the obligation of the buyer to compensate buyer's broker under a separate agreement, which, as I clicked, it launched SPBB. Verification of all cash. It should be attached. That's called proof of funds. Down payment, proof of funds. Verification of loan. That means you've applied. All of this should be attached. That's in the pre-approval. You would like it to say fully underwritten. That looks a whole lot better. What listing agents and sellers don't want is the transaction to fall apart in the middle. Why would a transaction fall apart in the middle? Two possible reasons, two most likely reasons. One, the buyer and the seller are arguing over repairs. Hence, we have a termite, a property, a roof, a chimney, everything in advance. Read them before you make the offer. Then we're not arguing about repairs. Two, buyer's financing falls apart. So if the listing agent they don't want it to fall apart. They're going to want to call your loan agent, and your loan agent ought to call the listing agent and say, hey, my name's Joni, I'm the loan agent, and I'm working with Mike's buyers, and I just want you to let you know I've been in the, you get the idea. But you're going to check the box that fits. For most of you, it's going to be pre-approval, because your loan agent doesn't do, even that sometimes. Verification of condition is what we call the walkthrough. Contingency, 17 days is a long time. Again, if you want to make it look better, you can put in a shorter amount. How would you know how long is it going to take the lender to decide if they really want to make your clients a loan or not? Ask the loan agent. Is this an iffy thing? What do you think? Right? How soon do you think we'll be in a position where we can remove the loan contingency? Remember, it's price and terms, and contingencies are about risk, and risk equals price. Now, what I mean by that is contingencies are about who assumes the risk, and whoever assumes the risk gets a better deal financially. So you could keep it at 17 for everything, have no contingencies removed. You'll be the safest buyer in the world, and you may not get the house, or you're going to have to pay more than other buyers. So find out from the lender. Appraisal. Ask the lender, how soon do you think we're going to get the property appraised? Write it in. Right? Be careful about removing this contingency. Unless your people have lots of extra money and they're not worried about it. The appraisal gap. which is what this paragraph over here says, look, if it doesn't appraise and it's 20,000 under, I'm willing to cover it. So we could say, well, if it appraises for at least 980, we'll make up the other 20. You need to know that if it doesn't appraise and your buyer does not have an appraisal contingency or a floor on the appraisal, then your buyer is obligated to make up the difference in cash. That's over and above what it said in the previous grid on down payment and closing costs. In addition to the already expected down payment and closing costs, they're going to have to throw in an extra 20 grand. Do they want to do that? Can they do that? Right. So I'm just saying, if the comps are wonky. Now, you see, why did we talk to the agents with pending transactions? If we know that there's a model just like this one that's closing next week and we know the price, it gives us a hint about what the appraisal's likely. This will become a comp that our appraiser is going to use. Again, ask the loan agent, how long would it take for us to get an appraisal? Investigation of the property. How soon could you get a property inspection, a termite inspection, etc.? It's usually we're not that busy. But again, you could lower the price by lower the number of days. By doing that, we're making our offer look more serious. Informational access means even if you don't have an inspection contingency, which would mean checking this box here. When would you do that? Check that box. This is another class, right? I'll do a class on contingency. When would you check that box and remove all your contingencies? If you're in Silicon Valley and you know there's going to be 8, 9, 10 offers, and the seller has given you a termite, a property, a roof, a chimney, a pool, the homeowner association documents, the prelim, etc., they're giving you everything that you would ever want. Then you could say, I'll remove that contingency too. There's another form that says basically you shouldn't be doing this, but it's a non-contingent offer addendum, the NCOA, which I thought had something to do with oceanic. Well, never mind. Now, even if you don't have an inspection contingency, you still get 17 days. I normally don't change that, to have access to the property. Sometimes listing agents say, well, you don't have an inspection contingency, you can't come in and measure. No, that's not what that, no. It means we can still come in and look around, measure rooms and things like that, get contractors to give us bids. We can still do that even if contingencies are removed, right? Notice that? Even if. Most agents don't read it. Insurance is a separate contingency. You should, before you're making the offer, have an insurance agent, 2 or 3, and share the address of the property that your clients are going to make an offer on, and ask the insurance agents, what do you think? Doesn't take them very long. They come back and say, oh my God, this is an extremely high fire zone. There's no way we would ever loan you money, insure the property. Well, that's good to know. Right? If they say, no problem, we're cool, whatever. But you might want to know how much time you would need to wrap up the insurance. It's a separate contingency now. It used to be thrown in an investigation. It's a separate contingency. Review of seller documents. Has the seller given you any documents? Do they have a property, a termite, a prelim, etc.? Again, you really probably don't need 7 days. You probably don't need 17 days to look at the prelim. You probably don't need 17 days to read the HOA documents. Now, review of leased or liened items. Are there, one of the questions we ask when you're filling out a form for our help to write an offer is, are there solar panels? It's not a good thing necessarily, but we want to, if they're leased, if they're liened, there has to be a transfer. It can take time. We're going to leave that in a little bit longer. Sales of buyer's property. If the buyer has to sell a house to buy this house, talk to me. There are ways of doing it without making it contingent. If there are multiple offers and you've checked this box, your buyer is not buying the house. If there's multiple offers and you've checked this box, your buyer is not buying that house. All right. This is, of all the contingencies, the worst contingency from the seller's point of view. And within that bad contingency, there are levels of bad contingency. Now, let's say the property is already in escrow and is about to close. Why check the box? It's going to close anyhow. Let's say the property is in escrow and there are contingencies that haven't been removed. Well, the seller is not 100% sure then that it's even going to close. Why do they want to take their property off the market on the hope that you close that transaction? Worst of the worst is you check the box and the property that needs to be sold hasn't even been listed yet. It's not even on the market. Well, this is awful for the seller because what if you listed too high? What if you're unreasonable? What if it takes too long? You want me to take my house off the market for what, 30, 60 days? On the hope that you're going to sell your property and close? You understand there are other ways of doing it. If you're checking that box. Now, if I have a buyer that says, I want everything safe, I don't want any risk, so I want to check the box, cool. Just look at homes that have been on the market 90, 100, 120 days. All right, look at those because they might be willing to accept this contingency. If it's a fresh listing and there's going to be multiple offers, there is no way this is going to get accepted. Possession, we usually don't do anything with that. Seller occupied or vacant property, it's close of escrow. Tenant occupied property, this will be, I may do a class just on this. If the seller or anyone other than the seller is living there, like children, relatives, friends in the guest room, but they're not paying rent. If they're not paying rent, they're not a tenant, right? And we could just kick them out anytime we want to, right? No. Those of you that remember real estate school may have remembered reading about an estate at will. That person in the back room that isn't paying rent has rights as a tenant and 30 days minimum notice in order to get them out. There's a tenant, you pick the TOPA. We'll do another session on that. 7, these are the time periods that the seller has to turn over information to you as the buyer. You should check these boxes. You should know what's included and what's not included. What the MLS says is not important. What's important is what do you put in the purchase contract. If you say, well, the MLS says that we're going to get the patio furniture, so I don't need to put it here, wrong. It says that the MLS is not determinative of what's included in the sale. Not what the flyer says. Well, the flyer says in the open house that I'm going to get the patio furniture. It says in the purchase agreement that doesn't matter either. You got to check the boxes. Does it have a stove? Yes. Does it have a refrigerator? Is it included? Now, the MLS may say check the box. Does it have a washer and dryer? Are they included? Who would know? Ask the listing agent. Dishwashers and microwaves, we're not talking about built-in ones. It says later, if you read P1, right, in the long form of this, it says all built-in appliances are included. But sometimes there's a standalone dishwasher and a standalone microwave. Usually we don't check those boxes. Is there a Ring doorbell? Yes, we've had people remove the Ring doorbell and take it with them. Check the box. Do they have cameras and things like that? Alarm systems. People wouldn't remove that. Yes, we've had people remove that too. Check the box. Security systems. Smart home devices like Nest. Check the box. Is there an electric car charging system? Check the box. Are there potted trees and shrubs? I've seen people remove them with a forklift. Check the box. Write in everything. All right. Check the box. NHD, seller, environmental, and usually they may already have one. but usually we write in seller's choice. But we spell it right. Choice. Wildfire disclosure, and we'll do another class on fire hardening and all that. Smoke alarm, seller, government point of sale, seller. Sometimes the lender doesn't want it. Sometimes there aren't any. What's a point of sale ordinance? Some areas, sometimes in Southern California, they want the property to have a minimum amount of insulation in the attic. And if it doesn't, it has to be retrofitted. Some counties have a requirement, like Santa Cruz County, about low flow toilets and plumbing fixtures. Now you might be saying, well, that's statewide. The difference in Santa Clara County is they send somebody out to look at your toilet. They send somebody out to look at the shower. And if it isn't low flow, they're not letting you sell. So we oftentimes would want the seller to bring it up to the code or what's required. Sometimes lenders don't like that. And they say, leave it blank. Now, well, if we leave it blank, what are we going to do? We're going to get an inspection. We're going to remember inspection contingency, and we're going to come back and say, here are all these things we want. You've got to put in the insulation. You've got to have the sewer lateral fixed. You've got to, put in the low flow toilets, etc. Escrow fee and title fee. What we're going to do if we help you write this is we're going to look at ChicagoTitleTransferTax.com, right? ChicagoTitleTransferTax.com. I know there are PDFs that the title company has. I like the web. And so what we would do is we would scroll down and we would find the county we're in, and notice it has city, county, transfer, who pays escrow and title. Customarily, sure, you could negotiate it. It irritates the listing agent that it's a county where the buyer pays for escrow and title and you ask the seller to pay. Or this buyer asks, the buyer's agent says, we want the seller to pay a city transfer tax, and there is no city transfer tax. It's just irritating the listing agents when you put in the wrong information. Now, if we're helping you write the offer, Raw is going to type it in and look at it, and we're going to fill out escrow and title so that it matches what is customary in the county. I'm just saying, right? But you should, that wasn't hard, was it? And then we would know county transfer taxes are usually paid by the seller. Is there a city transfer tax? Maybe, maybe not. Seller usually would pay for HOA fees. Private transfer fees are rare. They might be mentioned in a prelim, but if we have an inspection contingency, we could work that out later. A home warranty plan, I prefer to say seller's going to pay and it's going to be buyer's choice. I mean, that would be my pick because I want to pick the home warranty plan. Why do I want to pick the home warranty plan? I want to make sure it's a good one and I want my name on it so that my buyers, when they move in, they get stuff that says, Michael bought you this nice home warranty plan. And if you're helping somebody get a home warranty plan, by the way, you're going to want them to have the best one so that if something is broken, that it gets fixed. They don't want to hear, oh, it's a cheap plan. But that's a different class. And then if the buyer says, I don't really care, I don't want one, I've heard they're no good anyhow, whatever. Now, that brings us to the end of the grid, which is all I wanted to cover today. I'm going to do a class on contingencies and I mean, all those other little things, because this will go on for a long time. You can see there's a few addendum and things like that. Questions? I see there are some. Let me see. What did they say? Hold on a second. All right. So, hold on, good recording. I have Otter, but I need to launch Otter. I'm an assistant. How can you find out the listing agent is telling you the truth? Electric shocks. thumb screws, sodium pentothal, I don't know. It's better not to lie if you're the agent, because if you just don't. Juan is calculated for me what 3% is. He's smarter about this than I am. Where can I find that disclosure about selling the offer, sharing the offer price? D, that is in the residential listing agreement. The easiest way to see it is in PRBS, right? For those of you that think I'm lying, because I know you've been told by somebody, and it might even have been by your broker, that it's illegal, unethical to tell anyone the amount of the offer, right? I know that. So as we scroll through, PRBS, possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. Look at this paragraph. Offers not necessarily confidential. Buyers advise that seller or listing agent may disclose the existence, terms, or conditions of buyer's offer unless all parties and their agent have signed a written confidentiality agreement. How many of you have ever done that? How many? Now, so that's the easy one to find. It's in the residential listing agreement. It's in the statewide buyer and seller advisory. 12 days, those are just days, not business days. That is correct. If you read when I do the class on contingencies, I talk about days. I even have a quiz about days. The only place in the contract where it says business days is the 3 days to put the deposit into escrow. All other days are calendar days. However, if the date for performance falls on a weekend or legal holiday, it rolls over to the next business day. So today is what? Wednesday. So 3 days, we have Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Oh, well, but Saturday is a holiday. And then it's not Saturday, it's not Sunday. If Monday is, let's say, a legal holiday, then it's now going to be Tuesday. Calendar days, except for the deposit, is business days. But then if the calendar day, last one, falls on a legal holiday or a weekend, it rolls over. What is N5? Evidence of representative authority. Let's say, hi Sandra, how you doing? Let's say the buyer is a trust or the buyer is an LLC. Mostly LLCs, not trusts. But if the buyer is an LLC, then you would need to show that the person who's signing on behalf of the LLC has representative authority. For manufactured and mobile homes are governed by the state of California, the county or superseded, not applicable. Yeah, well, there are county and city ordinances that apply to mobile homes, manufactured homes, but anyhow, that's a different class. This wasn't focused on that. There are different rules, and that's because if the mobile home is not permanently attached to a foundation, it's mobile and personal property. But if it is attached to a permanent foundation and a certificate of occupancy has been issued, now the mobile home is treated just like any other house. Lie detector, shower heads are a point of sale, not in Santa Clara County, Santa Cruz County. Not Santa Clara County, Santa Cruz County. You need to Google search local disclosures. Santa Cruz County local disclosures, you're going to find them. San Francisco County local disclosures, you're going to find them. Alameda County local disclosures, you're going to find them. And what you're going to find is that they have different rules. Santa Cruz County, they look at your shower, your faucet, and your toilet. I'm not kidding. They're going to send someone out and look. And they also are going to check your sewer lateral and some other things. And it's a point of sale, which means that you can't close escrow unless you fix that. You can't close. It's a point of sale ordinance. Can you get a copy of this afterwards? Yes, Francisco, send me $5. I will send you my Venmo account. Or you could look at my YouTube channel, which is Upstate Real Estate. How'd we do? Was that enough for you, for y'all today?
Thank you.
Great job, Mike.
Michael, I wanted to share something I read last night. A unrepresented buyer, this is on a real estate board, Facebook group, said that he forgot to do the inspection and he was about to close and he demanded to have the inspection done. And the seller says, no, you missed the deadline. And he lost, he just wanted to get out of the contract. He lost his deposit.
So if there's an argument to be made that the investigation contingency, the informational contingency, which is 17 days, allows you the right to have an inspection. So within that informational access paragraph, you can bring in, you have a right to go into the property and you have a right to bring in a contractor or an inspector. Now, it's as it says in that paragraph, it's not a contingency. It doesn't give you the right to back out, but you still have a right to do it.
Correct.
Now, if the seller says, I won't let you in, then you would threaten the seller with a 2-day notice to perform. They think that investigation and informational access mean the same thing. They think that if you don't have an inspection contingency, you don't have a right to come in. If you read that paragraph, and I know I was going a little fast, but I pointed out at the end, it says in the informational access, even if the inspection contingency has been removed, even if. Now, what I do when I'm, communicating with listing agents, which they find annoying, is I do a screenshot of what it says in the contract and I highlight it and I send it to them.
Right.
Right. And then I would give them a 2-day, we're going to come in and look. And if they say we won't let you do it, you give them a 2-day notice to perform. If they still won't let you do it, now the buyer has a justification to cancel the contract.
This was an unrepresented buyer who just forgot to do the inspection, and then he figured out, oh, I didn't do a home inspection.
But you see, he's trying to do this to get out. This is why you don't want to be an unrepresented buyer.
Right. This is the reason.
This is a story to tell other buyers.
Absolutely.
But the answer to the question is that he still has a right.
Correct.
To do the inspection, but not a right to change his mind about buying the house because of the results of the inspection.
He didn't do one. He says, if I can't do one, I want to get out of the contract.
Well, so let him go. But you need to talk to a lawyer.
Yeah, that's what they suggested. But
he loses his money. He will most likely lose his deposit.
It depends. So there's a word. Let me just clear this up because this is a misunderstood concept. There is a word in the California Civil Code section on liquidated damages that does not appear in the residential purchase agreement. There's a word. And the word in the California Civil Code is the word reasonable. And what it says in the California Civil Code is that the 1 to 4 unit owner occupied limit to 3%. It makes it clear that it is not an automatic forfeiture and it still has to be reasonable. Well, when would it not be reasonable? Well, let's say the seller put the property back on the market and sold it to somebody else for an amount equal to or greater than the amount that the buyer was going to buy. The seller is not going to, if the seller goes to arbitration, they're not going to be allowed to keep the deposit because the arbitrator is going to say, "What? That's not reasonable. You made money because the buyer backed out. You sold it for more. You didn't actually suffer any loss at all. You can't have liquidated damages without any damages." So the liquidated part is only if we can't really determine what the damages are, but we can determine what if you sell it for less, 10, 20,000 less, then now we kind of know what the damages are. Agents think it's an automatic forfeiture. It's not. The money is going to sit in escrow until the buyer and the seller sign a document releasing the money. Or an arbitrator tells escrow to release the money, or a court tells escrow to release the money. It's not just going to go to the seller. I have been in real estate a really long time. The number of occasions where a buyer has actually lost their deposit is very, very small. Because in our market, the seller lists it, sells it to somebody else, same amount, maybe more. You don't get to keep the deposit. Check the civil code. It says reasonable.
No, that's excellent, Michael. Thank you for the additional. I think I was implying if the seller was taking a loss. So thank you for that.
Yeah, but you see, most agents don't think that the seller has to prove that they took a loss because it's liquidated damages and it means you automatically lose your deposit. It ain't so.
No, well, that's arbitration, you know, unless the two parties can come to an agreement prior to arbitration.
Usually they split the baby in half because they don't want to, you got to hire lawyers, you know, sue each other in order to get the court or the arbitrator to release the money. All right. That was a bonus about liquidated damages. I'm assuming we're done. Thank you, everybody.
Michael, could you do one quick thing? You said if there is a child, you were talking before, and I'm sorry, you said something and it didn't click with me.
So
if someone is selling and the person is not a tenant, but let's say it's the owner's adult child or someone is living on the property, you said they're not considered a tenant, but they can be removed.
not really.
Okay.
You see, what I said was that agents and sellers don't consider the person a tenant. Right? That's what I said. Now, the word tenant comes from the Latin word tenare, which means to hold. Like tenacious people don't let go and tenured teachers can't be fired. So the legal definition of a tenant is somebody that has a hold of the property. Now, California law has, and this is not just true in California, there's 4 kinds of tenancies. One kind of tenancy is called an estate at will. And in an estate at will, you don't have a formal lease. The person who's living there isn't necessarily paying rent, but they're still living there, and they have rights under English common law as well as California law. And those rights include the obligation of the owner of the property to give notice to that person that they have to move out. So what happens is the seller says, well, that's my nephew, you know, he's not a tenant, he doesn't pay me anything, you know, he'll go. And the nephew says, I ain't gonna go. I don't want to go. I got no place to go. And then, you know, can the buyer of the property just throw that person out? The answer is no, they can't just throw them out. They have to go through a legal process to get rid of them, which could include an unlawful detainer or eviction action. So what the CAR lawyers did is they revised that paragraph. So instead of the old version simply said tenant occupied property, they now added in or any person other than the seller is living there. So what happens is that the nephew is there, but the agent doesn't check the box TOPA for the tenant occupied property addendum. It doesn't check the box because it's a nephew who's not paying rent, not a tenant, right? But legally, yes. So you would want to check the box that launches the TOPA form, and then the default setting is you want it to be vacant. So now you're putting the responsibility on the seller to get the nephew out before escrow closes. But that nephew is a tenant under the law of tenancy in California, and by the way, most states.
Excellent. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. You're welcome. Anything?
Mike,
All
I
right.
got disconnected for a few minutes. Did you answer the question about what is evidence? Excuse me, a representative authority?
A represented authority, let's say the buyer is an LLC. The LLC is a legal entity. There has to be a human being that signs on behalf of the LLC, and they are going to want evidence that whoever is signing the document has the legal authority to do so.
Got it. Okay, yeah. Thanks.
All right. Elena, did you have a question because you turned your camera on?
I did. So this is, gonna call you, but I thought I'd ask you now. The guy who I'm negotiating with, you were exactly right. When I asked him how many other offers he had, he said he couldn't tell me. He could give me as much information as he could. And I said, okay, well, we're thinking of like going in at 520. How does that sound? And he's like, well, I can't tell you. Do you want me to verbally suggest it to my client? And I said, yes. I haven't heard from him. It was about 24 hours ago. So I think I'm just gonna give him a call back now.
Or,
Do you
or
have-
write the offer at 520.
Write it and send it.
If I knew because usually I would have talked to my seller, and my seller would have said, I ain't gonna look at anything under 530. Don't even bother me.
He would have said,
Right? So then I would say that to you, right?
well, yeah, they listed at 530 and then they dropped it to 500 in 4 days.
Well, so 520 is above list price. I would assume that above list price, just write the offer.
Okay, thanks.
Write the offer.
I can go into Zip Forms and just pull up the same offer and just
And
change
change it to 520, but you need to make sure that the deposit is reflected. It doesn't automatically update.
Got it. And
Okay,
send,
but you'll see that the percentage will be different.
okay, and then send with a new approval letter, right?
Yeah, assuming that, yeah, yours doesn't cover it, but just, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Mike.
Anything else? Anyone else? All right.
Real quick, Mike, and you maybe answered this too, where I was disconnected. Santa Clara County, the low flow.
It's not a point of sale ordinance. The state of California and then the TDS. How about this? In the
I
TDS,
saw that.
the seller checks a box that says, I certify that everything is compliant with the, water conserving plumbing fixtures rule. They check the box. Technically, at this moment, everybody's supposed to have water conserving plumbing fixtures, but they don't come and knock on your door and ask to look at it. Right, but you certify in the TDS that you are compliant. Whether you are or not, you certify. There's only a few places where they send someone out to look. Santa Cruz is one of them. And they're going to flush the toilets and turn on the showers and look at the faucet. And they're actually going to do that. And then they sign off whether or not you're compliant or not. That's what makes it point of sale.
So if they're not low flow, you would not check that you're certifying that they
already it's hardwired in. Basically,
okay.
If you don't check the box, you're saying that you have a unit that's not, legal. I mean, I don't know if you can even uncheck the box, but you can. The property inspector is going to say, I assume you can uncheck the box because you can sell properties that are dilapidated and are going to be torn down. So I assume you could check the box. But it's a question. It's related to the boxes where you check for water heater strapping and that sort of thing. Yeah. But I'm sure you don't have to check the box because I've sold properties that obviously they're going to be torn down. So nobody went in and changed the toilet so that they then could tear it down.
All right, thanks.
All right,
Mike, one last thing real quick. You're so knowledgeable. Is there a cheat sheet or is there anywhere that's showing the new forms that, have come out? When you go into CAR, I'm very familiar with things, but I'd love to have a list of what the new ones are that need to be added. And I just wondered, have you seen that anywhere?
Sure. I in fact have. And if you want to know where you would find it, CAR, first of all, am I showing my screen? Yes.
You are.
So if you go, notice there's a thing, this is where member benefits are called Smart Zone.
Okay.
See that?
Yeah.
And so if you open up Smart Zone, they used to have, and in fact, they may still do, if you're at the front and you scroll down, new forms added, session training, and if you click on read more, they have another class. I guess they've moved things around, but let's just go to Smart Zone.
Yeah, I did the classes. I missed this morning, but I'm just
it's
thinking.
Recorded. It's there. I mean, they've done like 10 of them.
Oh, go
All
down
right, and you
two.
can watch the ones that were done.
Yeah, there were 12 of them. The 12th was today and it wasn't recorded.
Well, I know it
Just,
hasn't been recorded yet, but first of all, in
oh,
Art Zone, you can see
no, I didn't know that. Okay, so
new forms.
learn. Okay, go to
Right,
learn.
and if you go to, I don't know if it's here, training and education,
Smart.
but anyhow, Smart Zone, you go to new forms and
New
business
forms.
practice
Okay.
resources. Notice there are special town halls. See that?
Yeah, I've done those. I just, I just was looking for like a sheet so that, if a form was added and we just to make sure that's in the offer or in the listing, I just have a quick, when you're tired at night or so. And I thought there's got to be something because some of the forms have changed. Even Debbie's class today, the forms changed the XP version versus 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I
It
can't
was
help you
updated.
with the EXPs yet. I've delayed doing a class on EXPs because of the changes, but
Exactly.
I'm clicking on the screen and you can see that this is where an implementation, frequently asked questions, training, grant, what should a broker do, post, what, blah, 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 quick guide, residential listing agreement. That's not the one I want, but I have it somewhere. They did.
Don't worry, don't worry. I just thought I'd ask you. I didn't mean to keep you going today.
Yeah, no,
You're always do such a great
they
job.
did have one, but it appears they've removed it, probably because this.
Years ago, do you remember Carr had it on there, or Zip Forms had it in theirs, and you knew this is what was needed for an offer, this is what you needed for a listing, and it was so easy with so many changes going on with this new, NAR settlement and stuff. I'm so afraid of missing a form that should be in, and especially when you talk about like these multiple offer situations, you want to make sure yours is complete and making it simple for the listing agent, or vice versa. If I'm the listing agent, which is what I normally am, I want to make sure I don't miss a form that another agent, since there's so many agents that are not keeping up with the changes right now.
Yeah. So part of the reason that they had one a while ago, but I don't see it on their list anymore.
Yeah.
Did download it. And the reason they don't have it is because things have changed.
It's so dynamic. Yeah.
Right. So what's going on right now is I'm getting more involved in the transactions that my agents are having.
Okay.
I'm in addition to all of the ones that you've seen that are available to the general realtor public, I've gone through the CAR certification for forms training for the new forms, but
Okay.
even then they've changed some things. But that was much longer than a town hall. That was like 3 hours long. So I'm getting more involved in helping write the offer to make sure EXP has a list of forms that they require right now. And
Yes.
most of the additional things come up when you check boxes. But
yeah, no, I've done doing both, aligning with like what you're saying, because it makes it so easy where everybody's freaking out. I'm not freaking out because it's really, I think it's going to clean out our industry, which I think is going to be a very good thing. I think it's just education for our sellers and our buyers,
Yeah.
and then helping other agents as you do, which is wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Take good
Anything
care.
else? This is your chance. You haven't worn me out yet. All right. Very good. Tomorrow we're going to talk about marketing and farming and things that you could share with people. Next week I'll talk about contingencies, some other fun stuff. All right. That's it. Have a good day, everybody.